Welcome to the Homeschool Mom Chat. I'm Teresa Wiedrick. I am the graduated homeschool mom turned certified life coach here in the homeschool mom space. If we haven't already met, you're welcome to join me for a free aligned homeschool reset session. If you haven't already done that, you can get clear on what your reasons for overwhelm are. That is essentially who I work with, is women who home educate, who are feeling overwhelmed or stressed, and they want to get clear why. So not only can you join me for a free online or a free aligned reset session, but I also have a quiz to help you clarify what exactly you're dealing with in overwhelm. There's so many possible reasons. In fact, on my podcast today, I speak about the 4 roots that I see as the most common, but I know that the experience of overwhelm is not just singular to my experiences. Since I've coached many women, I've learned that there are many reasons, and I continue to learn what they are, understand the layers of overwhelm. So overwhelm is kind of a big conversation point. So I don't want to overwhelm you anymore. Make myself giggle. I want to chat with a mom who is a mom who is also a homeschool mom. She lives in, I believe, Oregon, and she is an Enneagram 8, which if you know me already, you know I love Enneagram 8 moms. And she just is a spitfire, is clear on what her intention is around her own coaching work. And she recently wrote a book about overwhelm in the homeschool mom space. So I'd love to explore that story with her. And I introduce you to Amanda. Hey, you. Did I
Hi,
get that
Teresa.
right? Are you in Oregon?
I am. You did.
You are.
Very good.
Yes. Okay. I'm
Yes.
thinking either Oregon or California. So what is your weather like today? We're just starting to feel fall.
It's very nice today. It's like 87. It's
Which,
weirdly warm.
yes. What is that in Fahrenheit? Or maybe you don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Celsius. That is Fahrenheit.
Sorry, Canadian lady.
Yes. It's like 25, somewhere around that.
It's like it's above comfortable warm. It's like
Yeah.
it's hot, but not too hot.
Nice. I love
Yeah.
that. So you start somewhere in September, is that right? Or are you more in July, August?
With homeschool?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are more year-round schoolers,
Oh,
and
okay.
so
Gotcha.
we do slow down in the summertime. And so this summer we focused just on math, where we usually do a little bit more, but since I was writing the book and launching it, there wasn't very much time to devote to the year-round homeschooling. So we kind of went full force the beginning of September.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I decided I was an unschooler because I did a little bit too much formal stuff. And it's really hard to decide what you are when you've home educated for almost 2 decades and you changed every year. 4 kids. So then I don't know what I would call myself, but I felt like after maybe the 5th, 6th year, I knew for sure that the kids were always learning. And so I was always aware of what they were learning. So that with or without a math workbook, they were always learning, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I would love to hear your overwhelm story, besides obviously us reading your book, because that would be useful too. Which you have to
Oh,
tell us where we find it.
yes. Well, we can find it on Amazon, but I like to say like I was so I actually wrote the book on it.
Me
You
too.
know,
I relate.
like I get it. Yeah, I get that feeling. Um, so I am a second generation homeschooler, and you would think that all of my great experience, I've actually as a homeschooled person, I was like I want to say unschooled. Like we did like reading and math, and then like everything else was whatever you want. Um, and then my parents moved into radical unschooling. And that was when their marriage was starting to fall apart. We had moved to a different state. And it wasn't like a choice. It was just a result of what was going on in our lives. And then after that, once I was a teenager, I actually went to public high school. But back in the good years, the years that I remember that were full of joy and exploration and, just a little bit of formal learning, you would think with that wonderful experience that I had that I would know how to homeschool my own kids when we started, but I made all the same mistakes that new homeschool moms do. And I started with that big box curriculum, and we stuck with that for 2 years. And I remember, like, if we want to talk about overwhelmed, I'm trying to teach my 4-year-old how to read because he wanted to. I wasn't pushing it, but he really wanted to read. And I had a 2-year-old, and then I was nursing an infant. And I remember us like watching and the videos and him reading the books to me, and I'm like nursing my third son, and making sure number two doesn't like die or jump off something that's too high. And so those early motherhood years were very overwhelming for me. And what ended up happening as it slipped from overwhelm into something else. And sometimes when we've kind of lived in this state of overwhelm, we slip into survival mode and then self-protection mode. And there's a lot that happened in my past, a lot that happened before feeling overwhelmed as a homeschool mom, in my journey, even before being a mom.
Right.
And I had been living in this space of just being overwhelmed, being too busy, not dealing with my emotions. And I got to a breaking point, where it was like, you can't ignore these signals your body is sending you anymore. And that overwhelm slipped into survival mode, into self-protection. And I found myself just snapping at my kids at the littlest things. And that brought me to a place of extreme guilt, a lot of really nasty self-talk, and just this downward spiral of where, like, overwhelm to a certain degree is normal, especially as a homeschool mom when we're learning the ropes and learning our children, into just poor mental health. And that wasn't even like talked about. Mental health wasn't a word back when I was experiencing this. And so it's been quite a journey of going from overwhelm, which again is totally natural to feel, into this crushing shame, immense pressure, and this negative self-talk that was really harmful. And I share all about it in my book and how I came out of that, because whether we're just normal overwhelmed or it goes into something deeper and more harmful, we need a way out.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And though our stories aren't the same, I know for myself too that I had a story of overwhelm. That was really, for me, it was domestic violence. That was how I grew up, a lot of trauma. And so you become a mother. And I don't know if this was your experience, but for me, I really wanted it to be the charmed life. That's why my
Mm-hmm.
website is capturing the charmed life. And that is what I desperately wanted. And so homeschooling was just like the cherry on the top, just it's going to be perfect utopia. And then, you know, your book. I've got my own
Mm-hmm.
book exactly around that. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that exact experience. Um, but you know what I was going to say is that I really think that even though it has been challenging and really trying to understand it has been a lot, it's actually a benefit getting one of these like really dramatic hit the wall life experiences, because then you can shift away from what isn't working to what is. So I'd love to
Mm-hmm.
hear, what was the moment that you knew things really had to shift?
Yeah, there's probably two very significant spots. One where I kind of became aware, and then one where I began shifting. And there's a year, maybe 2 years that separates them, because there's being gracious with ourselves. There is a level where we have to become aware of the problem, and then, oh, it's like, okay, then I can't even begin to shift out of it. And so it's and when I really became aware how bad it was the moment. Again, same kind of, I have a newborn, I have a 2-year old, I have a 4 or 5 year old, somewhere in there. And I asked my, 4 or 5 year old, I said, don't touch your brother's high chair. I don't remember the reason why, just don't do it, He's trying to pull it off or something. And I got that in his and he reached out and touched it. Happened to be in the middle of sipping water, and literally no self control. I spit the water everywhere, yelling at him, I told you not to touch that. And I'm like sitting there in the physical realization, like, water's dripping down my chin, my shirt is wet. Oh my gosh. I, I can't even control myself in the middle of drinking water. This is not normal. This is not good. This is not what I want. And so that was the like moment of, oh, okay, this isn't good. This is not where I want us to be. And so that was the awareness piece. And
Mhm.
then within like a year and a half, it's all kind of very blurry.
Yeah.
I remember was trying to get some work done, and this was a really, really hard season for our family. My husband had gone back to school, and I was working from home, and I had 3 little kids, also trying to homeschool, but I'm also the one trying to make money at the same time. Like it was all sorts of messy, and it put me in a bad situation to worse. Like
Mhm.
mentally, emotionally, obviously also physically, because that stuff starts to wear on you.
Mhm.
And the boys were watching Moana, and I'd never really watched it. And I peeked around the corner to see the kind of climactic scene of the movie. And Moana's trying to fight this lava monster to restore the heart of Te And there's this lava monster, Te and the Te is this life-giving island goddess. And so she's trying to give this island, life-giving island goddess back her heart because it was stolen. And in the middle of the battle, Moana realizes the life giving goddess is the lava monster with her heart stolen. And I just felt in that moment so strongly God's presence and Him saying, you are a life giving goddess, mother, creator. You breathe life into things, but your heart has been stolen. That's why you're showing up as a lava monster. That's not who
So,
you are.
mhm.
Yeah, it was ugly cry all over for days. And after
I know.
after that, it was that, yeah, it was that moment that I had the ability to believe I could be different. But
Right.
before that, like, I was just aware of it. I didn't know I could really change. And that was a big shift for me because, oh, there's possibility here now. And that's where things began to shift in that moment.
I love that. And that is a really beautiful story. And it's Moana. Like, of all the things that you learn from, that's pretty wild. A Disney movie.
Disney. Disney movies, like, they talk to my soul.
Wow. That is really beautiful. And I'm really glad that something shifted inside of you. And especially as an Enneagram 8 woman, I just got to say, so good, so good. Because there is something powerful and so clear eyed about Enneagram 8 woman. And I think the world needs to be literally led by an Enneagram 8 woman. I love this. I love this so much. Um, so you got that awareness. Then what have been the actual shifts towards, well, actually, what would you say you now generally experience? Like, I know you're homeschooling still, and there's no such thing as never feeling overwhelmed again. That's not a thing. But
That's
the
another
two,
thing.
there is no zen like perfect homeschool parent. It doesn't exist. I really wish I had known that though way back when. I thought I was one
Mhm.
of the that experience, and now I see actually you're really really unusual if you've never felt this.
Yeah.
So what were your transitions to whatever you would call it?
hmm Yeah, so for a long time, I had already been helping people in the business that I had with replacing, basically renewing your mind and
Yeah.
changing your thought patterns. And I had spent I mean, even before I had kids, time and effort and energy. Like I had read Dr. Daniel Amen's book and really begun to understand, oh, neuroplasticity, and you have the power to change your brain. And so I had already had been like practicing that in a way and helping other people with that, helping other women. And so one of the things for me is I had this lava coming out of my mouth and I didn't want that coming out anymore. And so it's energy, and energy doesn't just disappear because I tell it to stop. So I had to shift it. And for me in that season, there's a Bible verse, Psalm 34:1, and part of it says, "Your praise shall continually be in my mouth."
Mhm.
And I said, well, that's what I want to come out, because lava, angry hot lava, and praise can't come out at the same time. And so as I grew in my awareness, and sometimes I would find myself in the middle of like yelling at my kids, I would stop. I would literally run away and go to my room and say, your praise shall continually be in my mouth. Your praise shall continually be in my mouth. And as I would say that, it came like a mantra that I could breathe into and like feel that rise of the emotion and fall of the emotion. And then from there, I usually would pray a little bit more, whatever I felt like was on my heart. And then I could shift back in to going and being around my kids. And I had a very little one at this time. And I remember sometimes scooping him up and taking him with me, laying him on the bed, because I mean, I had three other boys. So safety first. Um, so uh, that was part of that journey, is very actively reworking that neural, like that pathway in my mind, and shifting that energy. And that was probably one of the biggest things that really helped me. Um, and from there now, I feel the emotions rise rather than like, oh, all the emotion is turned on and I feel like a victim to it. So most of the time I can catch that and be like, okay, I need to take a break. Or I'll start to get loud and I'm like, okay, bring it down. And so that's where I'm landing now, where I'm showing up more as the way I want. And even just being mindful in the morning of how I want to show up. Like my one of my kiddos has one of those rainbow looms, and he insists on taking it everywhere. And I'm like, buddy, it like he drops it like half the time, and little rubber bands are everywhere. And like there have been several moments where I was like, you know what, it's okay, let's just clean it up together. And I'm like, man, good job, me. I did that. I didn't get upset or anything like that. Um, and so now I have the ability to help my kids in the hard moments rather than just try to regulate myself in the hard moments.
That is so beautiful. And I don't think our conversation is a coincidence, because even your use of Psalm 34, that was a very big one for me. Probably
Mm,
20, Psalm 20 and 34. But Dr. Daniel Amen, that was a really big part of my story. I actually got to be part of a workshop in person. And when he shared that just because you have a thought doesn't make it real, that was really mind blowing. And that was like 20, not maybe not quite 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. But I was just like, wait, what? It
mhm,
even dawned on me that I didn't have to think the thought, or the thought was not necessarily true. And so then I created a thought care checklist, which really was very simple, but it was just like, what's your thought? It was exactly what he says. Like,
mhm.
what actually, he actually borrowed that from Byron Katie from a book called
Okay.
Loving. And it's her book that actually I did in a book club last year. Went deeper into all of that, but really it is, what's your thought? Is your thought true? 100% true? And if you believe your thought, what does it mean? If there are alternate ways of thinking, how might that bear out in your practical activities? And that was a huge shift for me. And then the same thing you said mantra, I've used the word affirmations. I also created affirmations because it helped me to see what was true. So I would read
Mm.
things to myself in the mirror. And I remember hearing someone say, that is just cheesy and it's just so not necessary. It doesn't really work. I remember someone saying that on a podcast. And I get that it's not everybody's cup of tea, that everybody's not going to experience it meaningfully. But I did find it interesting, though, that I didn't grow up with those positive words and that kind of affirmation environment. But this person that was podcasting did. So I think there's
Hmm.
something said about maybe we need to hear those things because we haven't heard those things. And even if it's
Yeah.
out of our own mouth, it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree. And it's, there are tools that are available to us, and there'll be ones that work well for us and that worked well in this season, but maybe not this season, or that might not ever work well for us. That doesn't make the tool wrong. That it just means it doesn't fit you right now.
Yeah, those were the beginnings for me, but I came to understand for myself, attachment was pivotal in how I felt connected and how that impacted how I was showing up with my kids. How present I was able to be with what was actually going on rather than interpreting it in various threatening ways. You're
Yeah.
smiling, nod of an awareness, probably too. Yeah. And so when I'm working with moms, there are many layered things in my experience for overwhelm. It's not just emotional dysregulation, but that's a big one. And usually one of the first ones. Oftentimes, moms come to me and are like, I just can't make my kid do math or so many different things, but it's not usually actually emotional regulation at all. But this emotional regulation thing is really big because if we weren't taught how to do it, how are we going to help our kids do it? It's not
Yeah.
possible. So we need to learn that.
Yeah. And I would say the one of the amazing things about homeschooling is that we get to learn alongside of our children. But this is one of the hardest things to learn with them because we see the negative impact. But I also think that's one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling is because I will never be more motivated than to do this for my child. And I will never have more opportunities to do this than in homeschooling where I'm constantly around them.
I had a mom tell me, I think I screwed up my kids. And I was, oh, that's a very heavy belief to hold. And um, I'll just say, because I know where I've come from and the challenges I've had to address with the parent that was the instigator of the trouble that I grew up in, that I know that I would want his love and would want his presence in my life no matter what. And there was a lot of harm done. And so I
Mhm.
always built to thinking there's no way that you can have a point of no return. Sure, maybe it's possible, but I genuinely believe an intentional, motivated mom, no,
Yeah.
it's not. And but also, this woman said this to me, and then the next day I had a chat on a podcast interview with a woman named Sarah Susenka. She wrote a book called The Not So Big Life, and she is an architect. She wrote a book called The Not So Big Home too. I built my house on principle, and so I interviewed her, and she's not even a parent, but she said to me that the moment that you that you have something you need to do, you need to learn or grow in, that is the immediate moment. You giving that to your child join you in that. So no return. You are willing to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
And yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's so many different layers to this overwhelm conversation. Are there specific things that you would like to speak to the overwhelmed homeschool mom?
Well, so there's a lot of moms out there, and myself in particular, who are really drawn to like Montessori or Charlotte Mason or Waldorf. That's very nature based and beautiful and have worked for, like a century or more. Um, and for moms who are trying to recreate create these kind of environments where they were able to create in these, late 1800s kind of settings. We don't like live in that time period. And if you are trying to do something like Charlotte Mason and do all these really beautiful things and cultivate this great big like gentle feast for your children and all these different things and have such high expectations, well, that was created in a time where they didn't have phones, period. They probably didn't have electricity. Like there was candles, and it's I think sometimes we have this expectation which can be there's a beautiful place where our hearts like vision and desires align and we can create it. But if we're trying to recreate this entire setting that was created at 125 150 years ago, and we're trying to hold ourselves to the standards, we don't live in that same time period. And so often I see moms, whether they want this beautiful Charlotte Mason kind of experience or if they're trying to recreate school at home, like you aren't in those environments. And, there are things to take from school. There are things to take from a more Montessori approach. But when you hold this expectation that this is what it's going to look like, you're setting yourself up for overwhelm because, one, that's not what works with a family in particular, and then your unique family. I mean, I've got all boys, and you would think that would make them all the same, but it doesn't. So, you know, you've got these beautiful, unique gifts in front of you, and you get to learn them, become a student of them, and match the learning experience to them. And you can infuse those things from whether you want to infuse them from like a traditional school or something like Charlotte Mason, but make sure you're like becoming a student of your child first, because that will create a much more like fulfilling experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you can take little bits and pieces of everything. And really, at the end of the day, you're going to call yourself eclectic anyway. But you can enjoy,
Eventually, yes, you will.
yeah, um, you can just enjoy it. Yeah, the level of unrealistic expectation that you have, it's just creating more suffering. You're just more frustrated. And typically, not always, but typically we turn it outward toward the other people around us and say, you're not allowing me to do this thing. And in reality, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough resources, you don't have enough energy. And it sounds like a great idea. And I can tell you from experience, I've got a lot of unused curriculum, postgrad or homeschooling. I still do. And I am a true believer that I will be a grandmother someday and I will get to reuse it, but not that much. There is no way. So yeah, unrealistic expectations. That's a great one. So
Yeah.
I would like to close on this question. Working homeschool mom life, that's your experience. And I know that I'm to a lot of working homeschool moms that say, I don't know how to do all of this. I don't have enough time. And, there's motherhood is a lot. Homeschool motherhood is a whole lot more. But working homeschool motherhood, that is like off the charts. So, how did you do it? How did you write a book, launch a book, and still homeschool your kids?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. Well, I want to start with everything is a season as a homeschool mom. And I had my foot on the gas as I wrote the book. We went through editing, which, oh my gosh, that's the worst. Editing's the worst. Um, and then went into the marketing phase. And obviously I'm still there. But the launching, the marketing, and I had my gas on the foot for
Yeah,
a season.
yeah,
And now my foot is not on the gas and I'm pumping the brakes a little bit. We are, doing a lot more adventures outside. We're doing a lot more physical activities. I'm sitting down and I'm riding with my boys more now than I was this previous last year as I ramped up it and did all these things. But I think one, recognizing there's going to be an ebb and flow to your work and how much output before you do something that's restorative. So that's important to note. And then secondly, sometimes we make it so much harder on ourselves by not having systems in place.
hmm
And one of the big things I talk about in the book is setting up systems. And that's just kind of the way my brain is wired. And so like I don't have to start our homeschool. The boys, like sometimes I wake up and my boys are out there doing their math.
Hmm.
They're like, I just wanted to get a head start, Mom. I'm like, okay, that's great, because they know eventually we'll start, and it could cut into game time. Well, you finish school, and if you haven't finished, then you don't get game time, because maybe you're being lackadaisical or you got distracted easy, whatever. But having systems in place so the kids know the framework is really, really helpful, making sure you can take off what you can take off from your plate. You can't I wouldn't recommend taking off teaching your child how to read from your plate. Don't do that. That's an experience you're gonna want to cherish. However, as they get a little older, there's some things you can outsource very easily and is even better for everybody, can be a better fit for everybody. So making sure you're using your resources. And the last thing I would say, having a vision for why you're working. Now, maybe like I know my vision, like I am called to change the face of education in America. That's what I'm called to do. And that's like, I will not stop until I do that. And it'll be a lifelong thing. However, not everybody has that same like connection with their work. And so knowing why you're working, the vision of where it's taking your family, the benefits you guys are going to have from it, and how it's, fueling your guys' dreams and desires, that having a vision for that and clarity on that is what's going to help you on those days where you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. So clarity and vision. And I will say one more thing is to have a Sabbath day.
Hmm. Yeah.
You gotta have a restore day, because if you don't, the gas tank will run empty and you will find yourself doing the snapping, reacting, or checking out on your phone for hours on end because you're depleted. So you've
Right.
got to have a reset rest day that it doesn't involve work and is minimal cooking. Maybe you order out so that you guys can all just be together.
Yeah, that is really tricky right there. When you build a business from nothing, your heart is invested in it. You usually have a why, or else you don't continue with it. It won't. So it has to continue to align with why are you really here? Does this really matter to me? Do I really want to leave this as a legacy? But then when you get to the point of, yes, this is what I really want, then it's really hard to pull it back and say, okay, I need to actually switch gears to do other things. Yeah. But ironically, when you do that, you have so much more energy and creativity and presence and clarity on what matters most when you are working. So, yeah, it's kind of a benefit, but it's really tricky to do it. And I do applaud you. It is very challenging when you are working and you're generally trying to make an income and you are homeschooling and you said four boys? Was it three girls
Four
and a boy?
boys.
Four
No,
boys.
all boys. Four boys.
Okay. All righty. Well, the next one might be just kidding. I mostly to see your reaction. I had three girls and a boy, and I remember being pregnant with my youngest going into the grocery store, and someone randomly, who I've never met, said to me, "You're going to have twin girls." And I'm like, well, thanks for that. Expecting to know at this point.
Oh, man, people should keep their thoughts to themselves,
So it is a
especially
great
for pregnant women. Seriously.
a whole different conversation around overwhelm. That and the perimenopausal thing, which I'm trying to always bring to the conversation because nobody's factoring in perimenopause as part of their homeschool overwhelm, but it's
Yeah,
real. It is
it's
real.
real.
But it
It's
was such a
real, y'all.
yeah, it is so real. Let's keep talking about it. But thank you for being here. And where do we find your book?
Yeah, so you can find my book on Amazon. If you just search Overwhelmed, you'll find it. This is the cover. You can also look up my name, but it's a really long name by Amanda Schenkenberger. So just type Overwhelmed and you'll see it pop up on Amazon.
Amanda S. Yes. Such a delight.
Amanda.
And I'm so grateful that you hit the wall like I did once upon a time because I know your kids are so benefited and so are you. It is such
Yeah.
a pleasure. Yeah. I hope you have a beautiful week, and we'll see
Thank
everybody.
you.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.
Mwah. Bye, everybody.